It's James H. Reeve on GMR Talk.
Indeed, as is customary, and it's 28 minutes to 4. And my next guest, I think he's trying to put me off already by staying. No,
There's a clock behind me, I see. All right. Looking over my shoulder there, what you were looking at?
Well, yeah, there's, you think there's a man going, it's 28 minutes to 4, don't forget.
Well, anything that suits you?
Listen, I've got a long and carefully constructed introduction here, which I don't propose to take any notice of. Is that all right?
That's a great idea. How you doing anyway?
I'm all right. David Icke is the man who is speaking, and I won't ask you how you are, because there will be a lot of people preparing to giggle and think that I'm being comical, but I'm not. I'm being dead serious now, right? Because you've had a lot of you set yourself up as an Aunt Sally, or perhaps you think other people set you up as an Aunt Sally during the a couple of years ago, I think it was now.
No, 6.
Is it? Give over.
Yeah.
It does go quicker, doesn't it, once you get older? Is it 6 years?
Yeah, it's a long, long time. A lot of things have happened since that time.
Right. How do you feel now about that, when you rose to prominence and to some ridicule, which you will accept was what happened?
Yeah, well, it's like everything in life, you know. If you can look back on things with hindsight, you can see what they were about and what you got out of them. And the work I'm doing now and the things that I'm writing and stuff have actually been, if you like, inspired by the understanding and the knowledge and the things I observed at that time. Particularly that time gave me two things as a person. First of all, it allowed me to step out of the jail, the prison, that the vast majority of people on this planet live in, and that is the fear of what other people think of them. If you ask most people why they're not saying, doing, living their life as they really want to live it, and why they're not doing that, invariably it's the fear of what other people would think of them if they did it, because there is a very rigid norm in society, all over the world, different societies. I call them hassle-free zones, which if you conform to that norm, people leave you alone. No one calls you mad, no one calls you bad for the crime of being different. But if you operate outside that hassle-free zone in terms of what you say, do, think, then people think you're strange. And it's interesting that people outside the hassle-free zone and inside the hassle-free zone change from time to time, change places. For instance, the hassle-free zone's version of normality a few centuries ago was that the Earth was flat. So anyone who said it was around, a sphere, they were ridiculed and condemned because they were different. As soon as the evidence became overwhelming that the Earth was actually round and not flat, they swapped places. From that moment on, anyone who said the Earth was flat was given the same treatment. So it's just society's perception at any point in time of what someone's saying. So I really, first of all, let go of the fear of what other people thought of me. And it's only when you let it go that you actually realize what a hell of a prison it is. I never realized. And the second thing was, which has really helped me understand how a few people can control the world, which they do by controlling the major areas of our lives. It's how easy it is to get vast numbers of people to believe anything, so long as it's said often enough through the mainstream media, where most people get 99.9% of their information. And so those two things, seeing how easy it is to program, condition people to think something, even though it's complete nonsense, and stepping out of the prison of worrying about what other people think of me. When I look back, astonishing as it may seem given what happened, when I look back at that time now, I look back at it with affection because of how it's transformed me as a person.
What did happen? I mean, I know there was, I suppose the media must look back with no great pride in what they did at the time, but it was, oh, here's David Icke, get him on, he's good for a laugh.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, another aspect of that, which your question brings up, is that the way the reaction was to me. I remember standing up in front of a massive audience, about 1,000 people, students, Nottingham University, because as you quite rightly say, it was, let's get Icke, he's a good turn now. And I could not start speaking for 15 minutes because of the noise and people think things being thrown at the stage. Now, at that time, we're talking 92 here, those 1,000 people, those 1,000 students, has been conditioned to believe that I was stark, staring, flaming mad, in fact mentally ill. And people always, all of us, we think we're making statements about others when we do things and say things, but what we're actually doing all the time is making a statement about us, ourselves. And what I said to that audience was, you think I'm mentally ill, do you? Oh, yeah, you know how they go. I said, well, what does that say about you? Because you've paid to come here and laugh at someone you thought were mentally ill. Silence. And I think the way I was reacted to made a statement about the collective mind of this country, and not just this country, because it would have been the same in almost every other country. Why weren't people saying, hold on a minute, this guy, something has happened to this guy, what the hell is it? Let's have a look at this. No, it was, the guy's off his head, he's mad, he's this, let's just laugh. And that made a mighty statement about people in general and their state of maturity.
Presumably these were students who were writing degrees about social conditions in Britain in the 19th century.
You're so right.
How deplorable it was that people paid to tour lunatic asylums.
You're so right. And they're also the people that will be in positions of, quote, power and authority tomorrow, you know, the next generation. And I think we all need to look at ourselves. You know, I'm not sitting here holier than thou. I mean, all of us. At our attitudes to each other. You know, one of the things that I'm, well, indeed, the whole reason for this book I've just published, I Am Me, I'm Free, hence the title, is looking at the way that we allow ourselves to be constantly conditioned to see ourselves and others in desperately limited terms, and actually how we police each other and keep each other in line. You know, people talk about the FBI and intelligence agencies, and well, that's all true, and I go into all that stuff. But in the end, a few can only control billions, because billions police each other. You know, when you're on the edge of, take that hassle-free zone example again, you're on the edge of the hassle-free zone. In other words, you've gone as far as you can go in what you've said about what you think and what your lifestyle is and all that stuff, before you know you're going to be outside of the normal conditioned world, and people are going to start laughing and ridiculing and stuff, or condemning. When you're there going through that, shall I, shan't I express my uniqueness, or shall I suppress it to conform? You're not thinking, if I do, what will Bill Clinton think of me? Oh my God. What about John Major? Oh my God. What's going through our minds is, if I do, what will my mother think? What will the guys down the bar think? What about the blokes at work? Neighbours, exactly. So basically what we're saying is, what will the other slaves to conditioned thought and behaviour think about me escaping from it? In other words, we're policing each other. And if we just set each other free from these desperately limited versions of normality, then the few could not control the world. Because unless we become a herd sheep, collective herd mentality, a herd race, the few can't control us, expressing uniqueness, and it's all over.
Well, you can describe it in those terms, but other people use kinder words for it. They call it a culture. Now, a lot of people are happy within it, like organised religion, for which I haven't got a great deal of time for a variety of reasons. But if you're happy within your culture, then it gives you a framework within which to lead your life. If you take that away, a lot of people are going to have nothing to look to. One of the accusations made about the perceived decline in our society at the moment is that a lot of those cultural structures have disappeared, and that's why there is more lawlessness, because people haven't got things to refer to.
I think
we can't all be individual. We can't have 4 billion individuals.
Oh, you can. As long as everyone is respecting everyone else. For me, 3 things would transform this world from a prison to a paradise, which it could quite easily become. It's only a change of thought, a change of attitude. I mean, the world we live in today is a physical reflection, second by second, of human attitudes. Change the attitudes, the world changes. And first of all, if people stepped out of the fear of what other people thought of them and expressed their uniqueness, then they cease to be slaves to someone else's version of what they should be. Because we're not born Christian, we're not born Jewish, we're not born Islamic. We are conditioned to be so once we're born. We're actually, prejudice is actually the result of conditioning. We're not born in that state of mind. You put a little black child and a little white child together without any conditioning, they'll get on fine. You know, later in life the conditioning comes in. So first of all, if we do that. Secondly, let's let everyone else express uniqueness without condemning them and telling them what they should be and think and pressuring them to follow what we believe is right. And thirdly, and these things have to go in threes, otherwise it can't work, no one ever seeks to impose what they believe and they desire on anyone else, which respects free will. So although you're expressing uniqueness, you're saying, hold on a minute, I'm going to do it in a way that doesn't involve suppressing this person's ability to live his life as he sees fit. And so in answer to your question, I don't have a problem with people living their lives within certain cultural values, if you like. I have a problem when they start telling other people they have to live within the same version of reality. That's when the thing gets in a situation where we can be manipulated en masse, because then we become each other's police force. What I say to people is, you know, for goodness sake, don't listen to me and say, yeah, every single thing that man says is right. Think for yourself. That's basically what it is. But we've been conditioned to stop doing that. And overwhelmingly, we've been conditioned to fear expressing what we think. We live in a world of fear. Fear of what other people think of us. Fear of consequences of doing this. Oh, my God, you know. So if we do that, then fear is the four-letter word that controls the world. Once you let go of fear, you let go of control.
And what would be the improvement? We would still need, we will still be material beings. We will still need industry. We would still need what's its level, what's its pyramid of needs, what's he called? Anyway, we would still need food.
You're more educated than me. Yeah, I don't get into those things.
See, say pyramids to David, and you think of the Vauxhall Conference League, don't you?
Is that what I?
Yeah, that's the throwback to your footballing background.
Actually, I'm really into pyramids because the way the world is controlled is via a pyramid structure. That's the foundation of it. The few at the top knowing the big picture,
sure.
And the further you come down the pyramid, more and more people knowing less and less, and therefore being manipulated because they're kept in the dark. But you see, I don't just talk about what I call the spiritual, not the religious. God save us from religion, the spiritual, without talking about the way the world's physically manipulated. And I don't talk about that without the spiritual, because the two are completely connected. You see, so many things happen in the world today, what we call the insurmountable problems. Not because they are insurmountable, or even that they naturally occur. They are manufactured to divide and to rule. I've just come back from a 10-week tour, speaking tour around America, and I picked up so much stuff out there, because there are more and more open-minded scientists who are beginning to go well outside the hassle-free zone of traditional science and show what a limited view of life that is. And it's very clear that not just for a few years, but probably for decades, free energy technology, as it's called, which accesses the Earth's natural magnetic energy field and turns it into usable warmth and power for free, literally for free, the knowledge of how to do that has existed for a very long time. Not only free, once you've got the technology in place, it just runs forever without any cost, but also pollution-free. So we've got these massive problems. You talk about industry there. We need this, we need that, we need the other. Well, maybe some people would argue whether we need, like McDonald's hamburger joints all over the world, kind of imposing that uniform culture on the world. But certainly there are material needs. Those material needs could be, if this suppressed knowledge is allowed into the public arena, to be used, could remove the pollution and the cost of producing so much. One of the great scams that I am constantly pounding out there, because it affects all our lives minute by minute, and again, if it changed, would transform the world, is the financial system, the money system. What most people don't realize, because we're never told it, and I certainly didn't realize it until the last few years, is that all this debt in the world, and debt equals control, of course, it means poverty, it means all these things we would wish to rid the world of. That debt is actually debt on money that has never, does not, and will never exist. Because what the banks are lending is fresh air. They are allowed to lend.
At best, it's numbers on a piece of paper.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, if you just take a very simple example of how it works, you've got a bank, and the guy has put in the bank, deposited in the bank £1 million. So the bank's got £1 million, and his account says he's got £1 million. Guy comes along, wants to borrow from the bank 100,000. and they give it to him. And of course, to get that money, he's got to put up as collateral wealth that does exist, like his house and his business. And if you don't pay back money that doesn't exist, well, the bank get the wealth that does exist. It's a great scam. So what the bank do at that point is merely type into that guy's account the figures saying £100,000. That's all they do. And from that moment on, that bank starts charging that guy interest on 100 grand. And if all the banks are doing, and this is what we're told, and it's a lie, ladies and gentlemen of Greater Manchester, the banks are taking money from people that deposit with them and lending it to people that want loans at a higher interest rate, then in this little example, this guy here, who put £1 million in the bank, must now have 900,000. Even an ex-soccer player can work that out. But his account still says he's got $1 million.
I think soccer players are used to dealing with bigger sums than that now.
They are now, not when I played.
Old habits die.
So this guy's now got £100,000 to spend. This guy's got £1 million still to spend, which means £100,000 has been conjured absolutely out of nothing. It's fresh air. There's no paper, no coins, no precious metals to back it up. It's just figures on a screen. And 90% of the so-called money that comes into circulation in the world that creates the debt that is operating at an individual, a business, and a country level all over the world is actually fresh air figures on a screen. And I have actually put forward, I think, a very sound and well-argued way of solving the world's debt crisis. What we do is we start, actually this radio station could start to do it actually, what you do is you gather together.
This is the BBC.
You gather together loads and loads of jam jars, right? And you put the top on, trapping the air, right? And then you take it to the bank and you say, I borrowed fresh air and I'm just returning it. You can add a few jam jars of interest if you like. And that is actually the state of play. We are up to our neck in debt of fresh air. And most people don't realize this. And why aren't the chancellors and all the political parties of different colours telling us this? Because they're controlled by the people that control the banks that get their vast fortunes and power from lending people fresh air and charging interest on it. So the spiritual change of attitude, opening our minds, asking questions, not taking someone else's version of reality, fundamentally affects positively what happens in the material world you were talking about. Because when we change our attitudes, we don't take this nonsense anymore, and so the world's transformed. We're not up to our neck in debt on money that doesn't exist because we realize that's happening and we're not having it.
Okay, listen, I'm going to have to stop you. Well, I'm going to have to change tack at this point. I understand what you're saying, and it sounds like a refinement of theories that you've heard from time to time. It has certain allusions to one or two religious figures who've spoken in similar tones on the subject. Why did you choose, or why do you think it fell to you to think this through and try and tell as many people as you can about it?
Well, first of all, that's basically the motivation within me. When I realized, towards the end of the 80s and the early 1990s, I started to realize there were other explanations for life than the two we basically offered, which is judgmental God, judging people on one life on Earth, a life that apparently lasts a few seconds or 100 years, you know, which seems very fair, doesn't it, really, being judged on one or the other. Or science version, that we are a cosmic accident, have come from oblivion, are fast heading back for it. And when I realized there were other explanations, first of all, I got quite angry because I'd lived a very expansive life. I'd been a journalist. I'd worked on newspapers, radio, television. I'd been in the Green Party, in the political realm and stuff like that. And I had no idea this existed. And so I started to think, what the hell else aren't we being told? What the hell else exists that might challenge us, that is being kept out of the public arena? And then more and more things sort of came my way. Three-dimensional hard facts, dates, names, organizations, information, showing that a tiny, tiny few people, probably about 13 families at the peak of the pyramid, actually run the world, because at the top of that pyramid they control the banking system, the multinational corporation system, the world media, and the intelligence agency network. So at the, and they're all basically the same. And I just felt a very strong motivation, not least because, you know, you look at the children have to live in the world we leave them,
Well,
that people ought to know this information. And then have the right, going back to how we were talking about earlier, to make of it what they will, respecting people's right to accept some of it, bits of it, all of it, reject all of it. That's their right, but their basic human right is to know this stuff exists.
Right. I mean, you've just preempted what I was going to say, which was that you were coping pretty well, by some people's standards, enviably, within the system as it was.
I tell you what made
David
me...
Icke, he's on the telly, eh? I'd love to have his job.
I tell you what used to make me laugh, mate, in those early days. People used to come up to me at meetings sometimes and say, what you doing with the money then? Where's the money going? Well, you know, when I left the BBC and started talking about this, I basically earned virtually... First of all, money was pouring out of my life like a financial road traffic accident. I virtually earned nothing for 3 years because I believed in what I was doing, and so you know, when I look back, it would have been so much easier, as you quite rightly point out, just to have kept going, introducing Steve Davis and Match of the Day or whatever forever. But you know, there are other things to life than Newcastle United, really. Not other things to life other than Leicester City, I have to say.
But of course.
But I think that...
It's a bleak existence, then.
Yeah, that's right. Being a Leicester City supporter, things can only get better, really, can't they?
Don't tell me about it, mate.
But I just felt very strongly that, that this stuff had to get out, and things have started to happen that are absolutely incredible. It's great, you know, if you keep going, and you keep walking, and you don't break your stride because people are calling your names or doing silly things, it's amazing what you can achieve. I mean, in the last 11, 12 weeks, I've had a 10-week speaking tour of America, all over America. I've been to Stockholm twice, to Scandinavia a number of times, to Copenhagen, to Holland. I'm going to Australia and New Zealand in about 6 weeks' time, then back to America for about 3 different tours of America in 1997. And people say, oh, God, the Americans must be mad, or the Scandinavians must be mad. No, no, they're actually taking the trouble to look at what I'm saying rather than what I am alleged to be saying. And I've had a fantastic reaction over there from people of many different belief systems, because I don't care what people believe. They have every right, as long as it's what they believe and not what someone else is telling them to believe.
Okay, well, we'll see whether the people of Swinton and the surrounding areas are as receptive as they have been in the United States, Australia, Scandinavia and elsewhere, because you're at the Lancastrian Hall in Swinton this evening.
That's right. It starts at 7:45 for 8, and I'll be talking in part about the stuff that I've picked up around the States and other stuff, and also about I Am Me, I Am Free, The Robot's Guide to Freedom, which is an interesting book.
Indeed, indeed. Right, well, I think we've talked about a lot. There is clearly a great deal more to talk about. I could sit here for...
about another 10 seconds.
I would give it about another hour and a half, actually, but there are other pressures upon me, because I am a slave to convention, as you note.
You're in the hassle-free zone of the BBC, that's what it is.
Indeed, and believe me, mate, at times it's the best place to be. You know, you can just express yourself sometimes when the management aren't looking. David Icke, thank you very much for joining us.
Been a great pleasure, mate, thank you.
We shall see you again, doubtless in the near future, but you'll be at the Lancastrian Hall in Swinton this evening at 7:45. David Icke, thank you.
This is Willie Rushton, and...
You know, if you can look back on things with hindsight, you can see what they were about and what you got out of them. And the work I'm doing now and the things that I'm writing and stuff have actually been, if you like, inspired by the understanding and the knowledge and the things I observed at that time. Particularly that time gave me 2 things as a person. First of all, it allowed me to step out...
Do you think other people set you up as an Aunt Sally during the... well, a couple of years ago, I think it was now.
No, 6.
Is it? Give over.
Yeah.
It does go quicker, doesn't it, once you get older? Is it 6 years?
Yeah, it's a long, long time. A lot of things have happened since that time.
Right. How do you feel now about that, when you rose to prominence and to some ridicule, which you will accept was what happened?
Yeah, well, it's like everything in life. The jail, the prison, that the vast majority of people on this planet live in. And that is the fear of what other people think of them. If you ask most people why they're not saying, doing, living their life as they really want to live it, and why they're not doing that, invariably it's the fear of what other people would think of them if they did it. Because there is a very rigid norm in society all over the world. Suits you?
Listen, I've got a long and carefully constructed introduction here, which I don't propose to take any notice of. Is that all right?
That's a great idea. How you doing anyway?
I'm all right. I'm all right. David Icke is the man who is speaking, and I won't ask you how you are, because there will be a lot of people preparing to giggle and think that I'm being comical, but I'm not. I'm being dead serious now, right? Because you've had a lot of you set yourself up as an Aunt Sally, or you perhaps.
This is James H. Reeve on GMR Talk.
Indeed, as is customary, and it's 28 minutes to 4. And my next guest, I think he's trying to put me off already by staying. No,
There's a clock behind me, I see. All right. Looking over my shoulder there, what are you looking at?
well, yeah, there's, you think there's a man going? It's 28 minutes to 4, don't forget.
Well, anything